Welcome back to Alumni Game, the show where three Gamecocks dive into South Carolina sports, football, hoops, the NCAA, everything that comes along with it.
Where our opinions are never filtered, sometimes reasonable, and always fun.
That's right. You can check out all of those takes that we have on YouTube, Instagram, and wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow us on all those platforms. Settle in, y'all, and let's get started with this week's episode of Alumni
Game!
Hey, Gamecock fans, welcome back to another episode of Alumni Game. We're coming back to you. We're talking a little baseball this week. We're getting into it here. We realize, baseball season is over. We want to recap things here, and we're going to toss a couple of heaters around the bullpen and see what we can figure out and what went wrong with the baseball season. Buster's got some notes for us here, and then we'll get into it. Yeah.
First off, how do
laugh there?
we do in baseball? How
throw
do
it
we
away,
Okay, first of all,
Is Ray Tanner still the coach?
baseball season was over for us Gamecock fans a long time ago. Technically, the end of the season was yesterday in a thrilling loss, 11-3 to Florida in the SEC tournament. But my take is that the season was over long before that. We struggled this year. We had program worst since I think this was even from before we joined the SEC, so 30-something years ago.
Really?
6 total wins in SEC play. Here's a weird thing. We were in the midweek games, so, obviously we play a weekend series against an SEC opponent, and then during the midweek we play a smaller school, a non-Power 4 school. A lot of times it's like a Winthrop at USC Upstate, Presbyterian, College of Charleston, things like that. We were actually undefeated in those midweek games, but we were very, 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 very bad in the
defeated
SEC series.
Very
we only
defeated.
won one series. That was against Ole Miss a couple weeks ago. Of the 13 out of the 30 SEC games that we played, we lost by more than 5 runs, which, is unheard of, knowing our pedigree. And it doesn't just go back to Ray Tanner. We were a quality team before Ray Tanner. We had June Raines and Bobby Richardson eras where we were a very good baseball team. Obviously, we hit the high water mark under Ray Tanner with back-to-backs in 2010 and 2011, and then could potentially have gotten that Triple Crown the very next year, but lost to Arizona in the College World Series final. But that's the idea, is that was the benchmark. That was the precedent. That is the item that you look at to say that Carolina baseball is one of the elites, that the standard is the standard, which is postseason play with regular trips to Omaha. And there was kind of a coming over the mountain, going down, the decline after Ray left. First off, it was Chad Holbrook, who coached under Ray Tanner. He was one of the assistant coaches, and he did well. Obviously, he was there. He coached that third trip to the College World Series final. Obviously, we didn't come out on top. That's okay. But he did very well with the talent that he had. The problem was he was coaching Ray Tanner talent. And as we say in all sports, you can't follow a legend and expect to have the same level of success. And when you don't have the same level of success, then people are going to look at you and say, hey, you're not a good coach. That's kind of unfair. But at the same time, after those College World Series, it got to the point where the last couple of years that Chad was here, we were failing to even make the postseason. So
yeah, we weren't even going to supers or anything.
Yeah, so we fired Chad, and then I think the big issues that kind of originated at this point was after firing Chad, we were still in the market to get a very great coach. We were still a marquee baseball team, baseball program. We were still like part of the lexicon of great college baseball teams, and we could have picked any coach we wanted in the country, that sort of thing. Well, we ended up wanting Kevin O'Sullivan from Florida. And I don't know for sure, but the rumors, the strong rumors, the swirling rumors, these things that build, that have some legs to them, was that he was probably going to be our coach, just because coaching at Florida is difficult, and I think there was some, I wouldn't say tension, but maybe not like the full agreement between him and the boosters and the Florida bigwigs and this and that. And it seemed like it was going to be a done deal that he can come here, have a little bit more say in the program, kind of build it to what Ray Tanner had. And then Florida wins the College World Series that year. And, of course, he gets a big extension and he gets to stay at Florida.
Obviously, we settled on that.
Yeah. So we settled on Mark Kingston, who wasn't making much noise outside of one good season at South Florida. We thought this was going to be an up-and-coming young hire guy that's like got a little bit of flash that's starting to come along. That wasn't the case. He was okay. We did have some good wins. We did make the postseason a few times with him, but never really reached the same level of success with Ray. So it culminated, obviously, with his last couple of years here. He tried. He hired Monty Lee back to the program. Every Gamecock fan knows about Monty Lee. We don't need to go into details about him. And the thought was that maybe Mark could turn the corner. He couldn't. We got rid of him. So what do we do? Well, Ray goes out and finds Paul Mainieri. You know who Paul Mainieri is?
LSU.
Yep, one of the best college baseball coaches. One of
Coached Paul
Skeens higher at the time.
Coach Paul Skeens, my man Paul Skeens up there.
Yeah, so and
career is dying every day.
Mike, you said it best. Like we all called it. Everybody in the building that is a certified Gamecock fan said this is a home run hire. You got a guy that's one of the winningest coaches in college baseball.
Already in the SEC, already at LSU. Yeah, it's almost why would he come here? That was the only question I had at the time.
Well, to us, the biggest issue was like, oh, he's coming out of retirement. He had technically retired after coaching at LSU. He's in his late 60s, I believe.
A lot like the Spurrier hire, really, if you guys remember that. We were like, wait, Spurrier's coming?
Dude, perfect. Perfect that you said that, because that was the thing is like we have been there before where we need to jumpstart a program that has seen success, or we're building on something. So what do? We get a guy that is a classic winner, that is of the Mount Rushmore of great college coaches, like we did with Spurrier, like we did with Lou Holtz. And we're like, okay, we could do that with Paul Mainieri. And that was it. You said it best. This was supposed to be, and I love the keyword, supposed to be a home run hire.
Yeah.
It was not a home run. It was a strikeout on 3 straight pitches looking.
Yeah, and what it really was he retired for a reason, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know, like that to me.
But like, how important is? Let's be real. We all play baseball, right? Growing up.
Yeah.
Like we all play baseball, right? I don't know how important it is of a manager in like as soon as you get to the college level. At this point, it's just kind of like I don't know, man. Like I see in baseball, they're kind of worthless. I don't know, like in Major League Baseball at least. I'm kind of contrarian here. So, like, what is it? I mean, is it X's and O's on a game day, or is it something maybe behind the scenes? Because I'm seeing a lot of chatter on X or Twitter for us older guys.
I mean, I hear you, Sam, and I'm only talking first because I probably have the least to say about this. But, I mean, obviously at the pro level, like, obviously, right? But, I mean, there's still, there's the matchups and the numbers and righties and lefties and using your pitchers and injuries and subbing guys in and when guys are rested and the schedule. I mean, the schedule is not the same as pros. Obviously, they're not playing the number of games. They're not traveling as much, like Buster said, like the way it's scheduled, like midweek and weekends. But you would have thought from LSU, he would have the playbook and he played a lot of the same teams and would know. But being retired, maybe he was just out for too long, a little too comfy, cozy on the couch. It's not quite the same as a retired player.
Saw a lot of chatter about people not being happy in that clubhouse. But you take the reins right there. We'll hit that.
We'll
hit that in a second.
The thing is, like, so to get to your point, Sam, college coaches, what they do best. And this is going off of what Ray Tanner did best. And one of the reasons why we were back-to-back national champions is he had a feel for the game. He had a feel for when a pitcher was on or off. Or he had a feel when the hitters in the box were getting a little shaky on what pitches were coming next. So he could tell his pitcher or pitching coach could tell the pitcher, hey, start dialing up that fastball. The other good thing that a college coach does is he helps refine your fundamentals and your technique, because in college baseball, you've probably been playing since little league. You do have a pretty good grasp of the game of baseball, but you need to refine certain things, the tiny little incremental changes you make in your batting stance and your swing, or whether you're dropping your elbow or you're taking it in, and all those little things. And that's what a college coach does, and apparently that's what Mainieri was supposed to do. But here's what we get. So don't want to give too much away, because there are juicy tidbits from a lot of good insiders, a lot of Gamecock insiders on the internet. Jamie Bradford, there's a YouTube video out there. Sam, I think you pulled that. We'll share the link.
Check out the link in the description below, everyone, if you're listening.
Yeah. On 3, Gamecock Central, as well as 247 Sports, The Big Spur, a lot of great insider information, not only from the published insiders like John Whittle, but some of the guys that post on that message board that do have experience with Gamecock baseball and college baseball and baseball on that level. Basically, there was a disconnect. And again, I'm not going to give away the juicy tidbits. You need to go to those insiders, look at what they've shared, because that's the reason why they're insiders, and we don't want to hijack what they do best.
Yeah, we're just fans over here.
Yeah. So, but what we can say is that there definitely was some kind of disconnect between the coaches and the players. And you don't need the insider information to see that. You could have seen that if you watched any of the games, especially towards the end of the season.
Body language was way bad. Was so bad.
Yeah. When we won the first game against LSU, you could tell that the way the guys played, and the way that they celebrated, and the way they won and played that game, they may have been playing for themselves and not necessarily for their coach. That's a big tell. That's a big deal. You're not winning it for your coach against his former alma mater. You're winning it for yourself. You don't give a damn about your coach. So I think what it is Carolina baseball has a unique culture that was instilled by the likes of Ray Tanner, the likes of June Raines, and the likes of Bobby Richardson, and the likes of years of quality baseball with quality players. We have a unique culture. And in baseball, culture and program routine is a big deal. Think about this, guys. When y'all played, we all had our superstitions. Like I know I had a particular way to approach the batter's box. I had a particular way of taking a couple practice swings before I set my feet into the box and get ready for the pitch. I had a certain way to put on my gloves. I had a certain way to walk around. I would pace a certain way in the dugout. That's how baseball is played. It is.
I had to wear my socks a certain way. I had to fiddle with my gloves when I was going up to the batter.
You got to do the
play with
rally caps.
I played center field, right? So I had my glove shifted a certain way when the sun was out a certain way. We were playing the day games. I had to have my glove in a way where it was like this. But if it went like this or that, I had sunglasses on, and I had the eye black underneath.
Yeah.
And you have to jump over the foul line on your way to the way to the field.
And Mike, this because you watched Nomar Garcia Parra as well as I did when he was with the Cubs, and he had that particular way to adjust his batting gloves every single at bat.
Yeah, it got worse later, a little less famous. Coco Crisp did a lot with the gloves and his hands, and actually injured his finger at one point doing that. But yes, very small story. One time I actually held Nomar's baby. It was the 100-year game at Fenway, and I was working there for a photo company, and he was there with his wife, me and him, and they were doing photo ops, and they just handed me the baby, and I said, okay, I'll hold the baby, and then give it back. And saw a lot of other great people that day. Terry Francona was right next to me. He is 9 feet tall. Saw Jose Canseco, who was on 2 different cell phones at the time. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Do you think that baby's an athlete right now? What do you think?
Probably, unless I did something wrong. But at the time, no one said I didn't drop anything, and nothing fell out. So I think it was okay.
All right, that works. But that's the thing.
So not to just get us more focused here, but not to be too contrarian. But one thing I just want to mention that we didn't mention from the get is that we have a new. There is some talk that Mainieri is staying, because to get rid of him and Monty Lee and the staff sounds expensive, and I read $7 million. So there's that. I'll just toss that out there. And then the other thing being, this season for Mainieri, they're comparing a lot to Ray Tanner's first season in '97. Although that team found a way to win a couple more games, Mainieri is somewhat confident that he can turn it around in next year. But the state article that I'm reading about, that I read about for this episode, is not so confident. Just because we're losing a couple of good players. We're not going to be
A
able to get
couple.
people in the portal because of NIL. And I'm sure you're getting to this. But I just want to play the other side, too, that it was his first season. He was hired by Ray Tanner. Ray Tanner is not our AD now, so that our new AD could make new choices. But I think the other reason why we're upset about this and we're bemoaning this and we want to talk about this is we do not want to see this next year, but we might, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
But I think there's the difference, but I feel like in '90s, Tanner's first year, right? The talent was like the talent now. I feel like is better than in
yeah,
Mainieri's
we're
first
basically
year
saying
and
Mainieri
Tanner's
squandered a
first
lot
year.
of good talent that's going into the MLB now,
It
right?
makes
The
sense when
third
you transition
baseman,
management. It always that like there's like stuff like this happens sometimes. I just didn't think it was
yeah,
gonna be this drastic.
yeah.
well, that's the
Yeah, and
thing
I
is,
think you were speaking of that, Buster, that they weren't necessarily playing for Mainieri. They weren't brought in by Mainieri.
yeah.
In fact, there was another AD who was Ray Tanner, so there's a new AD, there's a new coach. Who am I playing for?
Well, that's the thing is
Yeah.
the issue is, you know, we could talk about like a coach's first year and it's never supposed to be great and things like that. Here's the deal: we Mark Kingston actually left a pretty well stocked cupboard. I mean, you had Ethan Petrie, he's an All American. We brought in some great transfers like Nathan Hall from Clemson. We had a good stable of pitchers, all those things, and then go back, and this is for you two guys and all of our listeners. Go back to that very first opening press conference from Paul Mainieri right when he got hired. The first thing that came out of his mouth was, "This is not a rebuild. This is to go and win a championship, not a rebuild." So why are we having to rebuild after you said it's
Right,
not a
because now
rebuild?
it
Why are
feels like a
we?
rebuild.
And so what it is it's going to be a rebuild. And you just said a couple of transfers. No, if the disconnect is real from what, and again, this is not from one source or this or that or an angry parent. This is from a collection of people that have different insider contacts, and they're all saying the same thing. That it, I don't want to call it toxicity. That's an easy word to put out there. But whatever Mainieri and his staff were doing did not connect with the players, and then the players were so disconnected from the coaches that they did not have the desire to play for their coach. They were playing
Yeah.
for themselves to the point where if Mainieri is to stay, and of course, you know, the reports that came out of USC and from the AD office between yesterday and today is that he's going to stay. Mainieri's even said as much that he's keeping his entire coaching staff. That, of course, includes Terry Rooney, the pitching coach, where there's a lot of talk about him not being a great communicator and has pretty much disconnected himself greatly from the players. So much so that if these guys happen to stay on the coaching staff, we're not looking at one or two transfers or graduation to the pros. We're looking at an entire team minus one or two people leaving. That is unheard of. When you're talking about baseball, what baseball is as a cultural sport, as a team sport, and you have an entire team transfer just because you're retaining the coach, that right there is the key piece that says this is not a good idea to retain Mainieri and anybody on his coaching staff next year.
That might not be I don't know. That might not be a bad thing if you bring in all the players that you want, right? Because you
Yeah, I
got
was gonna
players
say
from.
that.
Might not be a bad thing. I'm taking like a positive look, right? So Mainieri's contract runs out in 2029. So he's signed through June of 2029, or excuse me,
Yeah.
through May of 2029. So if I'm Mainieri, I don't have to go anywhere, right? I'll sit there, and if he wants to do it, I don't think that if it's a rebuild, it's a rebuild. I think the beauty of NIL and the transfer portal and today's college sports is, you know, even if you do have this situation that you speak of, Buster, where it's like everyone but like three players is leaving, you can refill, you can fill it right back up, right?
Yes.
Especially if you've got the guy. If we have a reputable history of the last 15 years, there could be there you could build it back up immediately.
Yeah,
Yes.
but think about
Sam, you're
this.
right, but you're talking about a coach who is 67, who has been retired for 3 years, who knows very little about NIL and the portal, and has to rely on his assistant coaches for that, I think.
And who also was quoted as
Unless
saying
he's learning
he
very
underestimated
quickly.
the strength of the SEC. Do you want to play for a coach that came out and said he underestimated the strength of the SEC? Do you want to play for a coach who has, and this is not hearsay, anybody goes and listens to his press conferences, he has thrown players under the bus. He has not taken accountability for some of the mistakes. He's willing to go out there and say, it's not on me, it's not on my coaches. It's just our players not playing. If you're a player and you have a chance to transfer, do you want to go to a coach? And again, baseball is such that word gets around. If you find out, like, hey, this guy ran off an entire team, you're going to know that. Like,
but it does make opportunity too. And Sam has a good point. I mean, it's possible, Buster, that, he was throwing those guys on the bus because he didn't bring them in and they weren't his guys and he didn't want them there to begin with. And now he can cultivate the roster. And there is a precedent here in that, and Mainieri was doing this earlier this week on a radio appearance. He was pointing to his first season at LSU in 2007. That Mainieri era in Baton Rouge started with a 29-26 season and then was followed up by a trip to the College World Series and a national title in 2009. So it's not impossible. He's done it before. Granted, it was 20 years ago and it was at LSU and it was not NIL and it was not portal or any of that. It was a different era then, but it is possible. And he does sound confident. And if we know anything in the SEC, confidence can get you a certain amount of way. So
you heard
if we are where we are,
2027,
he's going to be there.
National champs.
I want to stay a little more with Sam than I am with you, Buster, because I got to have some hope. It wasn't good. It isn't good. It needs to be better. He's saying that it will be better. And there is a precedent in his coaching career that he has done it before. Again, it was 20 years ago, almost a lifetime ago. Which raises, but we also signed a contract and Ray Tanner inked him under a contract that we kind of got to stay with it. We can't.
Yeah, I mean, that's
$7 million's worth of coaches contracts and get someone else next year and then have money to do stuff. We got to take that.
I definitely agree. Like, the idea is that it was not a great contract signed by Ray, and I think he did it more because Mainieri's his buddy rather than it being a fiscally responsible contract. But again, yes, Mainieri has done it, but like you said, it was almost 20 years ago, before NIL, before the rest of the SEC got very good. That was
we were still in school, basically.
That was the LSU team that won.
But I would say
games. We only won six games.
I know. There could be more to this that we
That's
see.
It. Six
right?
goddamn games.
Mark Kingston, who we fired,
hey, there's no crying in baseball.
Twice as much games with the same roster. So
I would even point deeper and I would say how many games had to end in the seventh inning because of the mercy rule. I was counting like 4 or 5 of those. That's pretty freaking, that's like the worst thing. And don't get me wrong, when I was on a bad team once, that was great, get to go home early, but that is not the attitude you want in a clubhouse. Like, oh, we don't have to play those innings, great. You don't want that. You don't want that.
Well, I will say this, and this will be my last little point.
Yeah, please.
This kind of goes to the listeners that are Gamecock fans that do pay attention to Gamecock baseball, because it is a different beast. It's not like football or anything. Like, Gamecock baseball is such a unique creature that the biggest hurdle that I think a lot of Gamecock fans that do want him to be fired or resign or whatever you want to call it, it's because he basically uprooted Carolina baseball, in quotes, as a culture. Like, Carolina baseball is defined by a specific unique culture that we are. A guy that came in and is trying to put in an LSU culture, that's heresy. You don't do that in baseball. You don't do that in SEC baseball. You cannot have a guy that comes in, blows up everything, and wants to rebuild in his way. And granted, his way could be good. We don't know. I'm hoping for that if he does stay. But to the point of, we don't want LSU baseball at the University of South Carolina. We want University of South Carolina baseball. He needed to adjust to the Carolina way, not the LSU way.
On a coaching standpoint, I would agree. On a player standpoint, I don't know. I over the weekend, me and my wife took the Circle Line in Manhattan, which is a fun touristy thing you can do. We go all the way around Manhattan,
the boat?
right? And one thing they were talking about was
the boat? Is that the boat, Mike?
Yeah.
I think it goes around the island.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I did that.
like big ferry boat goes all the
Yeah, yeah.
starts on the west side.
I did that with my
Takes them.
parents last year.
Yeah, it's so much fun. You go under all the bridges, you learn all about all these parts of New York. But they talked for a minute when we were going up the east side when we're near the Polo Grounds, right? And that's where the Giants played. The Giants were much more popular then. They would let the Yankees play games there, but they barely sold any tickets, whatever. The Yankees were really bad. It was not until a certain team from Boston let a certain Mr. Ruth go
Here
and
we
let him
go.
go to New York.
Here's the Boston plug.
And then that put the Yankees on the map, and then and then they got a stadium, and then they really got championship after championship. So in the modern era, you could, I mean, look, who knows, whatever. It did everything change with one player, maybe not, but the annals of history have it that basically without Babe Ruth, you don't really have the Yankees the way they are. And that's sort of what starts the rivalry because he comes from Boston, right? And that's sort of what we see in all of entertainment. Like my favorite battle anywhere is Batman and the Joker because Batman created the Joker, right? Like he throws him in that vat of whatever, the original way that he was created, and he becomes the Joker. For me, I mean, I don't want to go to the Bible or anything like that, but that, good rises and evil will rise to meet it. Evil rises and good will rise to meet it. And so, that's why in Boston, we always call them the evil empire, right? But obviously for Carolina fans, for us, Clemson's the evil empire. And for me, that's when things went south. I was talking to you guys early in the season, and I was like, guys, we haven't really played anybody, but we look okay. We've won a bunch of games.
Yeah.
And it was all like, let's see with Clemson, and then let's see with SEC play. Well, Clemson quickly sweeps us and just sweeps us aside like it ain't no thing. And I was like, this ain't good. Okay, but that's okay. That's just Clemson. Maybe they're really, really good, or we're not quite as good. And then we get into SEC, and it's like, woof, whoa. And like you said, couldn't even get one series. And maybe that's where you're a little right, Sam, because maybe at that point the coach couldn't right the ship. The writing was already on the wall. Players weren't going to play. They weren't going to stand up. They weren't going to get going. But it's a little ironic this year because at the beginning of the year we did honor Ray Tanner. Ray Tanner did bring this guy in. I don't know. I just feel like there's a couple other things here that make it hurt that much more. Because of what's in the rear view. But is it a full-on rebuild? Maybe it is. Maybe that's where we pin it,
I mean, if everybody transfers, it's going to be a rebuild. But, what can we're fans. We have no say-so with the decision-making of the athletic department. So, you know what? We'll let it run, see what happens, and then we'll complain or cheer in the next few months, just like we always do.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like we said, we have some other memories with baseball and Omaha, and it's not like we haven't been there and we can't get there. We probably can. I love what I was saying about '07. Sam seemed to love that too. And we know Mainieri's on the hook. So the only thing I would want to see from him maybe is at some point he could renegotiate his contract, knowing he hasn't fully lived up to it. I don't know that he would do that, but that would be a nice show of faith, on his part.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I don't know. Maybe that's enough for baseball for now. We'll put a pin in that. We'll obviously keep you up to date on transfer and portal and what Mainieri's doing there. But aside from that, I think we're all very happy to wrap up the baseball season.
Yes.
In another, albeit shorter episode of Alumni
Game.
Cox.
All right, even for baseball.